A cottage in the woods may be a pleasant place to work, but won't it isolate you from the information you need to do your job? Mark Roberts, Marketing Manager for Digital Equipment Corporation, doesn't think so.
With this terminal, I have virtually access to all the same information I have with my terminal in my office at work. I can pull financial models just right across the phone line and bring them into the system here and work on them. And so I can play the what-if games, exactly the same kind of thing that I do at work.
Just as the cottage in the woods hid a high-technology office, this Gothic facade hides an organisation that was forced by success to update its outdated methods. The National Extension College in Cambridge is the largest correspondence college in the UK. When it was small, its card filing systems were adequate, but as it grew, they began to fail. They were inflexible, analysis of information from them was slow and difficult, and they could only be used by someone on the spot.
The world was changing very rapidly. People expected a better service from organisations. They expected higher quality education than when we started in the 1960s. And our clerically based systems just were not able to keep up. So in a way, it was computerise or die.
Introducing a computer was a necessary risk, but one they're glad they took.
When we introduced the computer, when we planned it, we were about half the size we currently now are. So we've doubled in size as it came into the organisation, quite coincidentally. Had we been pushed into doubling in size without the computer, heaven knows what would have happened to many of our manual systems. I think they would have finally broken down, and we would have been in some very embarrassing positions in relation to our students and our customers and so on.
With so many students taking different courses, the college's success or failure depends on sending the right materials at the right time, and the computer can track this easily. But it can also have other equally significant advantages over the old method.
The problems were when you wanted to extract any management information from it. Because if you wanted to say, how well do Maths O-level students do compared with English O-level students, when you were about to, say, revise the Maths O-level course, the answer took 3 months to extract. So that we kept finding ourselves sitting on top of this mountain of valuable information, but never actually being able to extract it in time to actually use it to make any management decisions. And we began to feel that we were under such pressure to improve the quality of our work, that the only way to do it was to extract more information out of the system.
What benefits did you get after the system was installed?
The first benefit is that at last we have management information. We know our strengths and weaknesses from data as opposed to from intuition. And that's meant that we can begin to change systems. Now, this is a slow process. I wouldn't say that we've won the battle here. We have the information. It's another thing to train your staff to use it.
The machine they chose was a mini-computer with several terminals, all able to reach the same files of information at the same time. But there's still a role for the cheaper standalone micros which are not connected into the system. They use them for routine work processing and for writing personalised letters to their students. This one gives them their results in various tests and also, in this case, the correct answers. Micros on their own wouldn't have had the capacity to cope with a large volume of students' names and addresses and all kinds of correspondence course details. On the new system, if the workload increases, more terminals can be added, and there's plenty of disk storage to take care of future needs. This is a department, in other words, a group of people working together on fairly similar sorts of tasks, and you'll find them around in most large organisations. This department's in the London Borough of Hammersmith. And what they're doing is experimenting with an online integrated information system. Well, what does that mean? What they've done is to put microcomputers on people's desks. And this means that they can use these microcomputers quite independently using their own files in the floppies over here. But more than that, often in a department, people want to access common information, so they've linked these microcomputers together through what's called a local area network within the office to a group of disks here where the departmental files are stored. So they've actually got their own computers within their own departments. So at each terminal, they can do their own personal computing, have access to the departmental files, and communicate with each other. But more than that, the local area network is physically linked to the council's mainframe computer. In this way, they'll also be able to have access to the borough's corporate database and even be linked through to other departments. This may sound obvious and useful, but in practice it turns out to be quite difficult. A system with many users can get clogged, and a mainframe software is likely to be incompatible with the departmental mini or personal microcomputers, especially if they're of different makes. So it's not surprising that big networks reaching out to many people's desks are hard to find. Digital Equipment Corporation is a manufacturer of computers in Merrimack near Boston. Not surprisingly, they've put computer power at the fingertips of most of their employees, including the marketing, sales, finance and production staff you would meet in any company.
This afternoon I have to report on what our particular projections for this month are. And coming up on the screen now is going to be a report by geographic area of what our business is. And here it is on the screen. All I have to do is slide over to my graphics printer and it'll take an exact copy of what I have on the screen. And so it's coming out. And here I am, and this is the presentation of my report. And I'll take it into the meeting with me this afternoon and tell them that it looks basically like we're on budget, so we're safe for this particular quarter. There's a variety of pieces of information that I can get, and by our product groups, I can get the delineation of what our business is, because the managers have to report what products are you selling, what areas are doing very well, what particular marketing programs are working. Before this, we had, there were little pieces of paper all over the office. Nobody could agree. And it was really quite a task to make sure that everybody had the same information and then had the same predictions. As you can see here, part of our product line is not making budget, and we're going to have to do something about that. My portion of it's over budget, so we're fine. But it allows us to make those decisions very, very quickly. Some of my compatriots are going to be in trouble this afternoon.
Having an integrated system means that virtually everyone has access to it in some way or another. Different facilities are available to different people, depending on their needs and seniority, through the use of a hierarchy of passwords. A spelling checker is something for everyone to use, especially as they all use the keyboard. Some systems like these really enhance managerial productivity and turn out to be popular and acceptable.
Being able to compute the profitability of a deal. It used to take about a week. When you'd sit down, you'd pass all the requests to financial analysts who would go look it up and call manufacturing for costs and all this sort of a thing. And putting it into a financial model and building a standardized financial model, it's not perfect, but you can make an analysis in 10 or 15 minutes. And it's not only faster, it's more fun because you're now more competitive. Salesman calls up or a manager needs a deal. You can tell him in 15, 20 minutes what he can do and where the profitability point is and where you have to back off. And you can really go in and compete. So it not only cuts the junk part out, which is, you know, have you got the answer yet, but it makes it actually fun. It's fun to go in and be able to give the guy, we can do this.
1 year, our business was off. And in fact, the first quarter of the year, it was down. We were about 20% of budget. And we had done, in fact, 120% of budget the year before. We took a look by product, and the products were selling well. We took a look at the data by region. And by region, the data was coming in. And all the regions were off. Everything was about even. There were no big discrepancies in any of the data. So we called, using this system and the electronic mail capabilities, we talked to each of the sales managers. And we found that all of them were different. I hadn't known any of them from the year before, and so they didn't know our marketing strategies. They weren't familiar with the products. And so by being able to go through the information that I had here very, very quickly, we were able to identify what the problem was, put a training program together, get them fluent on what we were doing. And sure enough, the next quarter they were able to regain some of the lost business, and we were able to get our business back on track by the end of the year.
Other facilities are more controversial. This secretary is using a computerized calendar management system, where everyone involved keeps his diary on the machine. It can be asked to arrange conferences and meetings automatically. It seems a good idea, But in practice, managers felt that their privacy was being invaded, and they clogged their diaries with mysterious appointments to hide what they were really doing. The staff at the National Extension College had little or no computer expertise to fall back on when they had to turn their minds as to what they wanted from a computer.
We thought through carefully all the things that we wanted a computer to do, all the information we wanted it to store, all the information that we wanted to get out of it in terms of management information, the kind of statistical processing. And we wrote all this out as a 30-odd page long document internally and circulated it to different departments, asked for comments, went backwards and forwards, until we had an internal agreement on what we wanted a computer to do. We then sent that to 30 different computer companies, and then we went into a long series of discussions until we were down to 2 or 3. We went and looked at other people's systems actually running to see whether they gave them the management information they wanted, whether their staff were happy, whether they seemed to improve the administrative side, or whether in fact they were just clogging up people's systems.
Any system will stand or fall by its acceptability to the end user. Consultation is obviously important. To a clerk or secretary, things like comfort, screen reflections and noise from the printer all matter a good deal if you're required to sit at a screen all day. The word processing room at the Oxford Local Examination Board doesn't look likely to win any prizes for interior design. But within their budget, they carefully planned how the equipment should be used.
We selected the room first, and then we decided what was going to contribute most to the good work of the people we were asking to do the word processing. For instance, light's important. You'll notice that the wires are hanging down from the ceiling. This is to avoid people falling over the cables and match up the Health and Safety at Work Act. We have had people say, the screens make my eyes ache, I get headaches, and we do the best we can to overcome that with gauzes in front of the screens, that kind of thing, curtains in the windows so that the light doesn't shine on the screens. And I think that people sitting in front of a screen for a long time do get, of necessity, a bit overworked.
The screens have improved enormously in the last few years, but it's not the machinery that's the problem, it's the way the machinery is used and the way people have to work it constantly. And in some instances, 4, 6, 8 hours a day, and there's no doubt that that's the source of the problem. There are many studies which clearly show deterioration in a large number of faculties after 3 to 4 hours. Also, interestingly, show that it's counterproductive because the productivity of work got through deteriorates quite drastically as well.
It's the same with most people. Since they've been using the VDU, they need to wear glasses.
You have to stare?
Yeah. If you don't wear your glasses, you go home with headaches.
Much work has been done on the effects of spending long periods sitting in front of visual display terminals. Many ailments have been blamed on them, without conclusive evidence about whether the effects are directly or indirectly caused by the technology itself.
Well, I think if it's done properly, everyone benefits. We hear a little bit too much about people complaining about visual display terminals, the television-type displays, that they're difficult to use and it's difficult to read them under office lighting, which it often is. But what they tend to overlook is that the previous task they were doing might have been just as bad. I mean, a typewriter is often not very well designed, and lots of typists have problems sitting all day operating the keyboard. A computer keyboard is often thinner, and so it can fit on the desk more easily and still allow plenty of leg room underneath for the person's needs. And that can actually be better than a typewriter. So the fact that the new technology changes things is often an improvement.
So like most things, it comes down to the old techniques of consultation and sensitive management.
There's a tremendously rich literature on how to manage organizational change. We really do know most of the pitfalls of the electronic office. We understand how to bring change in gradually. We understand not how to get rid of resistance, but even to encourage it, to view it as a reasonable response by reasonable people about uncertainties, fear of loss of job, fear of loss of autonomy, and respond to it. It's unfortunate that the people who know most about the technology tend to be totally unaware of this literature. And unfortunately, the people who know most about managing organizational change simply don't understand the technology. So in the electronic office, in terms of both the thinkers and the doers, the people who are at a premium are the ones who can act as a translator between those cultures.
In one instance, there was a bank who brought technology into the office and for a period of a year experienced significant improvement in productivity and had a very happy workforce. These were clerical type people, somewhat a little bit more skilled perhaps. At the end of the year though, the morale turned down and the productivity fell off. And they investigated to see why had this happened. And it was very interesting. You know what they found out? They found that when they put the technology in, the people first had an enhanced self-image and they saw their job as being a better job, and they also believed that this meant they had a better opportunity to move up in the organization. And then after a year, it dawned on them that the job was the same job. They had a tool to make them perhaps more effective, but they were going to do the same job. There was no next step. So an expectation level had been raised. An opportunity, in quotes, had been offered and then withdrawn. So now the morale is very down because people did not anticipate, management did not anticipate as they chased productivity, what did the worker feel about his job? What did he feel about his opportunities? How were those expectations changed as a result of this development?
I'm certainly concerned that a lot of managers will naively accept this technology, bring in a lot of technical specialists who aren't particularly interested in the people or the consequences, and they will do damage to morale. I certainly think that the impact on employment is likely to lead to a lot of people who now hold semi-skilled managerial jobs, semi-skilled administrative jobs, losing them and not getting them back. But one can't predict. Management responsibility becomes very, very key. I think among other things, managers have to have a very clear vision. They've got to really think through what do they want the office to be like in the future. I often ask managers, what would we like to come to work? What would this desk look like? What would your people be doing? What will you yourself be doing in your day? And then build from that. One can think in business terms, benefits. One can think in terms of impact on workers. One has to have a very clear idea of the end result.
We had obviously a lot of hesitancy, as everybody does, when you say, in effect, we're going to dismantle all your record system and put another one there. We overcame that by, for the first year, running everything as a dual system. So the whole of the manual system stayed and it was kept up to date day by day so that if people didn't trust the computer, they could always go and look it up on the card. And we've only ever removed each of the physical card systems as people have become confident that the computer knows it all and gets the answers right every time. So we overcame the staff hesitancy in that respect at that level. But more importantly, I think, is what it's done for the job satisfaction of the people who work in that area. They've got more responsible jobs, more varied jobs, and are more involved. They are brought nearer to the centre of all the processes and control them more than when they were simply updating a great big file of cards.
One way of improving the morale of people working all day with new technology is to give them a new career structure. This is happening at ICI's pharmaceutical division, where they word process the detailed technical reports on the tests the company carries out on new drugs. Before this, copy typists stood little chance of advancement. Now, with their greater experience of technology, they're finding new rungs on their career ladder.
I started as an operator about 4 years ago, which I did for a couple of years, and since then I've been supervising the centre, and there's also a deputy supervisor position as well. Also, because the secretaries are getting more technology, you can also go on to varying different career paths or operating VDU terminals, that sort of thing.
We find that in many cases, not only do they actually welcome the transition from a typewriter, say, to a word processor, and having moved on to the word processor, they're very reluctant to go back to a typewriter because they welcome the extra facilities. But what it does seem to do, in some cases, is actually change the role of the secretary. It allows her to do the typing part of a job, which is not all that large part, very quickly and very easily. But then also, certainly with word processors which link into other systems, she can actually become more of an information assistant and support the manager in other tasks. She becomes the focus of knowledge about the system in the office. Work
in the office has certainly changed greatly over the years. Nowadays, new technology can bring greater autonomy in many jobs, but it can also isolate people and even threaten some jobs we've always thought of as secure.
It's been interesting how the system has changed the way some of our people work. For instance, one of the things that we can do with this system is my people have to submit to me financial forecasts of what's going on. So for instance, we use a spreadsheet calculator or something like that. And again, rolling up that 1,500 pieces of data, the financial organization, by using the computer system, saved, their department went from about 12 people down to 6 people, because they didn't need those 6 people to do simple tallying of the information. Their job changed to recommending financial strategies for us. So we saved 6 people, which easily justified the system over the course of 2 years. It made their jobs a lot more interesting.
Any company that seriously addresses the issue of number of staff in a head office can reduce them by 20% with ease. That's a figure I've seen in company after company in the UK and the US. There's that amount of fat, that amount of slack, that amount of paper chasing and bad communications and inefficient ways of getting information. The question is, does one want to do that? That's one issue. I think probably one has no choice. There's almost an economic imperative. The economic benefits from the electronic office, properly implemented, properly managed, are so great that I don't think any company can neglect them. On the other hand, the consequences are equally dramatic.
The pattern that seems to be emerging is this. The computer has already automated many highly defined clerical and secretarial jobs. But now it can increasingly improve the productivity of many people who search for information, modify it, and pass it on to others, senior clerks and middle management. If we look at the wages bill for a typical large company, the peak is in this middle area. This is where companies can make their biggest savings, and during the recession, they have.
Yes, technology can have a significant impact. It can encourage, I think, to some level, the reduction of middle management, because it can create an access to information by top management where they've had little managers playing that role. Some managers really aren't managers. They just carry that as a title, and really what they are analysts of some type of information. There's a danger in that. There's a real danger. I think while it allows you to be perhaps more efficient, we have to be very careful that we're not giving up something that is part of the decision-making process, for example, the decision-thinking process.
A lot of the discussion around the electronic office is deterministic. There are the Office of the Future is Now club who say that technology inevitably leads to benefits. I think there's also a lot of anti-utopians who say that it will be disastrous, it would dehumanize jobs. And I think both can be true. I have seen often the same technology, almost in the same context, being used to either make jobs much more interesting, to give people more autonomy, to take the drudgery out of work, or the reverse. We have to treat the user as a very real person. And once again, that's going to be one of the issues for management, not to start talking about bringing in technology into the organization and parachuting it into a department and telling people that on January 1 you will be doing this. But much more thinking through this issue of what do we want the place to be like? If there are benefits, who pays the costs? If there are costs, how can they be reduced? If people are afraid of computers, how much of that fear is legitimate? How much can be dealt with? Now, what this means is that management choices become very, very key.